On the B Brains today, we're going to talk about TV shows in our area of expertise. I'm Sam, and I'm a philosopher, and I want to talk about The Good Place.
I'm Eric, and I'm a physicist, and I want to talk about the Big Bang Theory.
Okay, great. So we each guessed what the other person thinks about the show in their discipline. So first, we're going to reveal our guesses, and then we're going to ask the other person how they rated it. So in each of these areas, we're going to grade it from an A to an F because we used to be professors. So we'll start off with mine. We're talking about The Good Place, which is an amazing show. I can't say too much about it because it's one of the shows that you least want to
Oh,
spoil.
yeah, you have to watch out for those spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to not do spoilers for The Good Place too much.
I'm there won't be any spoilers for the Big Bang Theory. I don't think.
Okay. We'll try. We can always edit them out if they slip out. But in any event, The Good Place is a show about a woman who wakes up in the afterlife and in the good place and is told about the system of rewards and punishments based on our actions on Earth. And it's chock full of moral philosophy in particular. And there's a character who's a moral philosopher.
Sam, actually, so yeah, I mean, I think I had a philosophy course at some point, and I've read a bit about the history, but what the character Chidi, who keeps referring to himself as a moral philosopher, I actually didn't know that was a thing. Like, is moral philosophy a course that you can take, or is it a discipline? Is
Oh,
that
sure.
so?
Yeah.
Moral philosophy is a real term.
Yes.
Okay, I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, that's a general thing. I mean, usually you'd say you're a philosopher, and then there's the classic divisions of philosophy are metaphysics, ethics, epistemology, and logic. And then there's other subfields like philosophy of mind, philosophy of religion.
Wait,
But
but
yeah,
those modern fields? Like, is it like those fields you just mentioned? Are they all? Do they still all have active practitioners?
oh, absolutely,
Oh, okay.
completely. Yeah.
All
But
right. Yeah.
people don't usually say, and so people might say, oh, that person's a metaphysician, would be the way you'd say it. They specialize in metaphysics, or that person's an epistemologist. But for ethics, they would say you're a moral philosopher.
Okay.
Yeah, an ethical philosopher sounds like you're a good person,
Yeah. I
which
mean,
isn't always true.
like I said, I'm pretty widely read, and I didn't wasn't entirely sure that moral philosophy was even a thing.
Sure, yeah. And
Okay.
it's funny, philosophers always make so many distinctions, and but between ethics and morality, they mean pretty much the same thing in philosophy. Maybe someone's going to correct me on that. But
Hmm.
I think in everyday life, I've heard people say, well, there's a difference between morals and ethics. Yeah, we don't make that distinction. We make all the other distinctions.
Oh, okay. I thought morals was the philosophy and ethics were the behavioral guidelines, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that people do. But in philosophy, we treat them the same.
I see. Because philosophers are inherently moral and ethical.
Uh, Maybe, probably not. And then there's meta ethics, and well, we'll talk about that some other day.
Okay.
Um, so the good place. Do you want to? What did you think? How did you think that I was going to rate it in the various categories? And maybe you should explain what the categories are.
Right. So, what are the categories? So, well, we settled on two categories. We're going to discuss the accuracy of the subject matter as depicted in the show. Right. So, and then second is we're going to discuss the accuracy of the profession, which is to say, do the people in the show conduct themselves the way actual, in your case, philosophers conduct themselves, and uh, do they do they talk like philosophers, that kind of thing. So the first category, the accuracy of the subject matter. So now that we've established that there is such a thing as moral philosophy, the question is, do I think the show depicts moral philosophy accurately? Or wait, or is the question, do I think, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
oh
I
yeah,
think the
so is the
question is,
moral
what do you think
philosophy,
I'm going to say? What grade am I going to give it for how
what grade are
accurate?
you going to give the moral philosophy as depicted in the show?
Right.
Uh, Well, I'm going to chicken out and say a middle grade of B. I'm going to predict a B because I mean, when I listen to Chidi talk, he sounds to me like he knows what he's talking about. But again, I'm an outsider. I've had like one philosophy class 30 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And for the accuracy of the depiction of the profession, so does Chidi seem like a philosopher? You know, I mean, the thing is, because we are talking about sitcoms. This will come up again when we talk about Big Bang Theory, right? So each character has to be flawed in ways that are entertaining constantly. So, so Chidi is a very Chidi seems to be a very flawed person. Do I think do I think he's a plausible philosopher? I mean, okay. Personally, I'm going to say not especially for reasons that we can get into, but I feel like again, his core character flaw is a lack of is he can't make any final decisions. He doesn't. He doesn't seem to be able to draw any firm conclusions about anything. And I think this. I mean, I think this is maybe poking fun at the way philosophers can talk their way around on an issue. But I think that if you're actually going to, I mean, again, this is just a prediction based on my own experience with scientists. If you're going to make this a profession, you're going to have to be just the reverse. You're going to have to be arrogant and opinionated. So I think Chidi's going to come off because he's refuses to be arrogant and refuses to be opinionated. I think you're going to give him something like a D.
Interesting. Well, I might have been grading on a slightly different notion than you did, which is how does the show depict the profession of philosophy, not in particular Chidi as a.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so do that one too, and then I'll have to come up with.
Okay, so all right, so the depiction of philosophy. I mean, I thought that was pretty accurate. Maybe a B. I mean, philosophers like to talk about things, and they like to choose abstract examples and try to draw. If the person they're talking to is lucky, the philosopher might eventually get around to a real world conclusion. And I know that some of what Chidi talked about is real philosophy. So and also. Yeah, I mean, we see him working mostly in solitude or in conversation with one or two other people when he is in an academic department. So that all felt pretty much accurate to me. So I would give that a B.
Okay. Well, let me reveal my actual grade.
Okay.
So in terms of the content of the show, the content of philosophy, you said that I would give it a B, and I actually give it an A.
Oh, okay.
It is just spot on, perfect. Doesn't get really into the weeds of too many philosophical debates, but I don't think that it could really, and for a network TV show, when you really get into philosophy, it's way too technical. I'd be like doing the math on Big Bang Theory. You just can't do it. But it's phenomenal. It also engages with the content of the philosophy in a really heartfelt way, like a genuine way. And there's a series, there's a show. I guess I shouldn't give spoilers, but the idea of a utility pump or a happiness pump, which is like an objection to utilitarianism. Like there's a whole episode based on this specific objection to utilitarianism, and it's exactly.
I don't
right
remember. On. I don't remember. Do you want to? Do you want
to? Doug Fawcett when they visit him on Earth.
Well, yeah, but do you want to just unpack a little bit about what the utility pump is? Because I don't remember.
Yeah. So one objection to utilitarianism, which is which is the ethical theory that you should always maximize utility.
And what is utility?
Basically happiness or well-being.
Okay.
You could obviously analyze it in different ways, but one of the objections to it is that we should always be sacrificing our own happiness for others, and that we should always be thinking about how to, just in the process of always thinking about maximizing it does not maximize utility.
How does that, what does utility pump mean?
So that's a person. a happiness pump or utility pump is a person who's just trying to maximize other people's utility all the time.
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and that doesn't seem to be maybe virtuous. And so there's an episode on that particular criticism that's just spot on. And all the philosophy that's talked about is entirely accurate, and it isn't fully detailed the way it would be in a philosophy course, but of course not. So yeah, I give it an A. I detect no philosophical mistakes in that show. Maybe I would if I was, a specialist in ethical philosophy, but I taught ethics a bunch of times. I don't see a mistake.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they did an amazing job on that. In the finale, which we certainly can't talk about because we promised we'd do no spoilers, I disagree philosophically with the sort of underlying view that is presented in that finale, but they present it completely accurately, and it's a real philosophical theory. So I just happen to disagree with that one, but that's not a problem with the show. Yeah. Okay. So gets an A for that. In terms of the profession, now remind me, what was your grade for?
Okay. So I thought, so for the profession, I thought, in terms of the way professional philosophers conduct themselves around one another, I gave it a B.
Okay. So I give it a C.
Okay.
And the reason is all this ridiculousness about Chidi's doctoral dissertation. He's working on his doctoral thesis. He's like a professor somewhere. You have to already have your doctorate. And this thing is like 2,000 or 3,000 pages. It's completely unrealistic. And so I know they wanted to capture the idea of Chidi's indecisiveness in terms of this work, but they could have just made it a book. His life's work, his version of. They didn't need to make it a dissertation.
That's true. Although
that he needed to get tenure, I think, was in the show or something like ridiculous. Like
although there is such a thing as a professor who has all but their degree. So I mean, do we know that Chidi has a PhD?
Well, I'm sure that some fan on the internet has a theory about that. But
okay.
Yeah.
Like no one ever calls him Dr. Chi. Oh no, when I think that he is Dr. Oh, I can't pronounce his last name, but I think his title is Doctor or Professor. Yeah.
So, right. So I think he does have it. So I think that part was unrealistic. And, he's just hanging out in his office and Eleanor comes in and he's, oh, let's talk about philosophy. Just to any random student coming in your office. Not quite how it works. But wait.
You wouldn't, if an enthusiastic young person walked into your office and they weren't in one of your classes, but they had a genuine interest in philosophy, you wouldn't kick them back out the door.
But they didn't even go to the school. She wasn't a student. She was just a human.
That's true.
On campus.
Yeah, you're right. If you're right, if the positions were different, right? If a student who was not going to the college I was teaching at walked in, I would hurry them out the door. You're right about that. I would say call me first or set up a meeting at best, something like that. And then there was a third criterion.
It's about Chidi,
which was just, I felt that Chidi was, I'm predicting that to actually be a tenure track philosopher, you need to be more decisive and more arrogant than Chidi.
Fair point.
We don't need to give him a grade on that, but
but I think in terms of the way that he explains things, like when he's actually teaching things, he does a great job of explaining that. But when it comes to making a decision about a philosophical theory, he has trouble doing that.
As I said, that was one of his character flaws that the writers introduced to create humor from episode to episode. So, that's when the writers do that's the place where reality is going to fall apart anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, should we move to your show?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to talk about the Big Bang Theory, and I'll try to avoid spoilers. In brief, the Big Bang Theory is about three scientists and an engineer who work at Caltech. And they their various romantic attachments, especially to a waitress / actress who lives across the hall. But we're here today to talk about the physicists and engineers in particular. So let's see, what was the first criteria that we're going to grade? The accuracy of the subject matter. And Sam, what did you have we already asked?
No, I'll
Okay.
go over my predictions.
Okay.
And so I'm going to say that you're going to give this show a grade of an F for the accuracy of the subject matter
Oh, interesting.
and for its depictions of what it's like to be a physicist. I also think that you're going to give it an F. And now this new criterion that you talked about, which is how plausible are the people as members of that discipline? So as physicists,
Yeah.
I think maybe I predict you're going to give them a C for that.
Okay. Wow. So, boy, I guess, and you're expecting me to be a real hanging judge in this scenario. Okay. So the accuracy of the subject matter, you predict I'm going to give it an F. Do you mind if I ask why?
Yeah.
What is it about
I don't know physics, but I feel like they give a lot of just blah, 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 and all these things. And I think, is that really
So
real?
you think all that stuff is technobabble?
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, that's my prediction.
And then for the depiction of the profession itself, you also predict an F. And what's that based on?
Yeah, I think that's based maybe on the way certain funding and grants work, some of the prizes. I mean, a certain character going to space, for God's sake. Although I know astronauts are scientists, but you don't usually grab the scientist and just say, okay, now you're going to space, instead of usually have someone already in the astronaut program. So.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about that particular objection. Okay. All right. So shall I start?
Yeah.
All right. So accuracy of the subject matter. Actually, I'm going to give that an A.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So all the stuff that sounded like technobabble to you is almost entirely provided by an actual UCLA professor named David Saltzman, who was a consultant for the show. And all that random technobabble is almost all sourced from an actual practicing physicist.
So I guess what we're learning is that physics sounds like technobabble to me.
It probably sounds like technobabble to everyone. I mean, one of the jokes I like to tell about The Big Bang Theory is I understand why I like the show. What I've never understood is why anyone else likes the show, right? Because to me, at least the science is, a lot of the science is genuine. I mean, some of it is pretty far out, so it's, some of it's theoretical, untested, that kind of thing. But of course, that part of the point is that Sheldon is a theoretical physicist who's always going to be on the cutting edge. But yeah, I can't vouch 100% for the science content, but every piece of the science content I was familiar with in one way or another was more or less accurate. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, they took a couple liberties. You could call it an A minus, but yeah, no, it's also in the apartment where they all live, there are whiteboards, and on those whiteboards, every episode has different equations from physics or chemistry or some other branch of science, and those equations again they're not made up. They're all accurate. I think they're all provided by David Saltzman, again with rare exceptions. I think there was one exception. There was an episode where the first Indiana Jones movie was discussed. And apparently they took that whiteboard from something in an Indiana Jones movie. But normally it's provided by this science consultant that they hired and had on staff. Okay, so you predicted A and I'm giving it an F. Okay.
No, the reverse.
Oh, yes, thank you. You predicted an F, and I'm giving it an A. And then let's see. Part 2 was the accuracy of the depiction of the profession. So I'm going to give that a B. So you predicted an F. And remind me, why did you give that an F?
Well, because of the grant structure and the way the department chairs or department heads or the deans, the way the deans.
Oh yeah, okay.
Working.
So, all right. Well, I'd be willing to go as low as a C. Okay, so let's talk. Okay, so let's talk. To unpack this a little bit, we have to figure out what the heck their jobs actually are, right? So, Howard is an engineer, and the thing is, so yeah, I mean, one thing you could argue is that in almost every episode, Howard is working on a different project, right? So in one episode, he's got access to a robotic arm that they're going to use in outer space. In another episode, he's got access to the control center for a Mars rover. In another episode, he's working on a space toilet for the International Space Station. You know, in another episode, he has access to classified control systems for a military drone. You know, so I mean, in every episode, Howard's engineering contacts allow him to do whatever the writers want him to do. So in that sense, I mean, you know, in the real world, obviously, an engineer would presumably be on one, maybe two projects at a time. I can't imagine that Howard would be on more than two projects at a time. I mean, you know, so also, if you unpack the specifics of the projects he was working on, most of his projects are affiliated with NASA, and so they're probably, I had to look this up, but about 15 minutes away from Caltech, there's a sister institution called the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So I have the impression that Howard actually mostly works at JPL. You know, but it's not out of the question that he would have an office at the Caltech campus. But the fact that he's sort of always on the Caltech campus, I thought that was a little weird given where his priorities obviously lie. So, you know, you can go down the list. You can look at the others too. Actually, my biggest complaint, my biggest complaint is the way they depict Leonard. Leonard is an experimental physicist. And whenever we see him in his lab, he's usually alone. And that does not add up. I mean, we can quibble over whether Leonard is an assistant professor who's tenure track, or whether he's a research scientist working as part of a much larger group. But in either case, he would have at least one postdoc. He would have at least one grad student. You know, he wouldn't, you know, but when we see him, he's always just working alone. Maybe his friends show up. That I thought was completely implausible. And just day to day, he's having lunch with his friends, but you almost never see him interact with other experimental physicists. So again, I thought that was, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go as far as an F because, you know, he has a lab and he's doing experiments in the lab, and there's an actual laser on an optics table. I mean, there was a lot of the pieces of the puzzle were there, but in terms of how he's interacting with the people, you're right. That's not the way physicists, experimental physicists especially. That's really a team sport, and they don't show that as being a team sport. Sheldon's more of a theoretical physicist, so. As a theoretical physicist, depending on the exact topic, working alone or as part of a very small group, that's not unusual. So that's pretty accurate. And Raj is mostly an observational astrophysicist with a focus, I think, on planetary physics and planetary astronomy. Although he does, at one point, Sheldon hires him to do something completely unrelated to that. But yeah, actually, I should say I'm not an astronomer or an astrophysicist, so I'm a bit of an outsider. I will say that what he was doing day to day did look okay to me. I did think, yeah, I mean, there's a moment where he loses his planetary science job, and Sheldon hires him to work on an astrophysics project. And I did think that leap was just gigantic. I felt that was really implausible. The ability for someone who specializes in planetary astrophysics to jump over to dark matter detection, that did not seem very likely to me. But again, to me, that feels like quibbling over the details. Again, overall, I wouldn't go any lower than a C.
Okay. Well, cool. And then one thing, just hearing you describe all that becomes clear to me that one of the differences between these two shows is The Good Place has one philosopher who's kind of has a little living room philosophy class going on. And Big Bang Theory is really about the profession and is squarely grounded in the profession. Yeah.
I mean, now that you've heard my arguments, do you still want to stick with your F?
Well, I wasn't giving it a F. I was predicting what you were going to do.
Oh, you were predicting what I was going to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose, yeah, I was focused a bit more on, the equations on the whiteboard and the fact that it's pieces of an actual lab and, and the fact that it's not just made up technobabble. So a lot of the, speaking as a physicist, all that stuff from day one, that was always very exciting for me to see those pieces of my profession on the television screen.
And doing accurately. So when you see that show, you're not offended.
Well, I am offended, and we can get to that, but not by the physics.
Okay. So is what you're offended about the next part, which is how plausible are the characters as scientists?
Yeah, I think I do want, I do want to, because when you first suggested that we talk about this is what I thought one of the things you wanted to talk about. So yeah, actually, especially the first 5 seasons, I find the jokes funny. I find the science engaging. I find the characters lovable, but there was, in a lot of episodes, there's something that there's something to be offended by. A lot of the jokes are based on stereotypes of one kind or another. Stereotypes surrounding nerds. There are some jokes that are based on stereotypes around Jews, which I also didn't love.
Right.
It doesn't matter that the actor and the character and the writer of the joke might all have been Jewish. It still bugs me. But yeah, the core thing, it may be not quite offensive, but the core thing that I want to quibble about is the characters are all depicted as really hardcore science fiction nerds. Now, before I became a physicist, when I was in high school and in college, I was a science fiction nerd, and I probably still am. But when I got to grad school and I actually began training to be a physicist, what I discovered was that almost none of them are hardcore science fiction nerds. I think it's easy to understand, actually. Once you've actually made the decision to be a professional physicist, and especially once you've gotten a tenure track position in physics, that's roughly equivalent to getting on a Major League Baseball team. It's literally that competitive. And so just like once you're on a Major League Baseball team, you spend your whole professional life focused on Major League Baseball, right? Between Major League Baseball and your family, I don't think there's like a third enthusiasm that you can have. And I think being a tenure track physicist is very similar. I have many friends who are professors, and actually many of them are, I suppose, musicians, amateur musicians of one kind or another, but almost none of them are, really big into Star Wars or Star Trek or anything like that. When I first got to grad school, this was actually a big surprise for me. I was expecting to be surrounded by science fiction nerds, and it really did not work out that way. I don't know exactly why, but it just so happens that the profession, the profession just it doesn't care as much about science fiction as I thought it would. So I felt like I was the exception to the rule.
Right. So maybe it would have been better if it would be better for you in your life if the world were more like the Big Bang Theory.
Popular culture might have been lying to me.
Awesome. Okay, well, maybe we should just talk about, do we like the show as a show, regardless of our discipline?
Well, I've been talking for a while, so I think you should go.
Okay. Well, maybe the question could be, which one do we like better?
Which one do we like better?
Which one do we like better? And I'm going to say that I like The Good Place better.
Wait, before we, I feel like if you're going to, I feel like at some level we're comparing apples and oranges. If we're going to have that conversation, I would like to take a moment to unpack a technical difference between the two shows.
Okay.
So The Big Bang Theory is a 4-camera sitcom. And The Good Place, if I'm remembering correctly, is a single camera show. Do you know what, I want to explain what those mean, but do you know what those mean?
Not.
All through the 1970s, 80s, et cetera, most sitcoms were 4-camera sitcoms. So what you would do is you would have a set with 3 walls, and the 4th wall that was open to a live audience if there was one. And then where the audience is, there are also 4 cameras side by side. And then each of those cameras will be focused on a different portion of what's happening in the set. Okay, so the actors are moving around, and one camera might follow one character, another camera will follow a second character, a third camera might be in a wide shot, and so on. And then the humor, the show itself, is produced afterwards in the editing room by cutting together whatever the most interesting of the four cameras is showing at that moment. Okay, so four camera sitcoms, they're limited in certain ways. They have to be lit very brightly because all four cameras have to have a good shot all the time. And the show itself, the show itself has a much more cartoony feel. You can see the difference. There's an episode of Scrubs, actually. So Scrubs was normally a one-camera show, but there's an episode of Scrubs where they do a four-camera parody, and you can, if you watch the difference, it's instantly apparent. The four-camera show, all the colors are washed out. It's much harder to do a close-up. It's in a four-camera show, so it's much harder to pull real, genuine emotion out in a four-camera show. So the characters are intrinsically more two-dimensional in a four-camera show. All right, anyway, so that's the difference between a one-camera show like Big Bang Theory and a one-camera show like Good Place and a four-camera show like Big Bang Theory. Okay, now you're going to tell us which one you like more.
Okay, well, I like The Good Place more, and I think it's actually about those stereotypes, the kind of stereotypes of geeks, and I also think there's a lot of coding of Sheldon as neurodivergent, and stereotypes about that are happening, as well as the ones you mentioned. And so, and it's an older show. I mean, it ran forever. And so I think Good Place was much more recent, and had some advantage there just from the development of people's thinking about these things.
When did Good Place premiere? Do you know?
I think it was around 2016 or so.
Oh, okay. So much later. Big Bang Theory premiered, I don't remember the exact date, but it was about 10 years earlier.
Right.
So, okay. So some of my complaints about sexism, for instance, right. It was being written and it was being created in a different era.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that maybe it's just that The Good Place is more modern, but okay. I do love both shows. I watch them both. My kids love them, and the one thing I'll say about The Good Place is that in later seasons, I see why they ended it after 4 seasons. There's a lot of looping and repetition, and it wasn't quite clear. It wasn't quite clear how they could go further with it without it getting very repetitive. So. It was like a high concept that, was
reached a natural conclusion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so, and then the question to me about the Big Bang Theory. Oh, the question to me is, which one did I like more?
Yeah.
I like the Big Bang Theory more. I mean, just in terms of pure, I want to limit my here. I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm mostly focused on the first 5 seasons. Again, after about 100 episodes, I think any set of characters begins to run into creative trouble.
Right.
But for me, those first 5 seasons, I mean, I can still pick an episode almost at random and watch it and laugh and enjoy it and not think about it too hard. I mean, I did enjoy both shows really thoroughly. I laughed at both shows. But again, for me, I am a science fiction nerd. So I enjoyed watching a show about science fiction nerds. I enjoyed all the little references, the science that was not technobabble, the nerd debates that were also not technobabble.
Right.
Right. Sometimes there were bits of nerd enthusiasm on the show that I hadn't heard of. And then I went and looked it up and I became enthusiastic about that. There was an episode where they were talked about something called Red Hulk, which is another Hulk from the Marvel universe. I'd never heard of the Red Hulk. So I went and read about it and that was fun for me. So again, I'll say, I know why I liked The Big Bang Theory. What continues to baffle me is why anyone else likes The Big Bang Theory. But I did like both shows very much, and I wish the networks would, never mind the networks. I wish the networks and the streaming services would take more big swings at high concept science fiction, or high concept science and high concept science fiction.
Great, and it sounds like one of the the thing, since we both thought they were very accurate, and they had consultants because the Good Place had Todd May, who's a philosopher,
Oh,
as
okay.
a consultant. That when they really try hard to get the subject matter right, it makes it a better show.
Well, okay. Actually, does it make it a better show? I mean, the philosophy that was accurate made it better for you. The
Right.
physics that was accurate made the show better for me. I'm not sure. I mean, actually, again, I wonder, well, did the technobabble in the Big Bang Theory, what you thought was technobabble,
Yeah.
did it drag the show down at all for you?
Oh no, no.
Okay.
It was fun. I just sort of didn't think that it would, because Sheldon was being portrayed as being cutting edge and brown, Nobel Prize winning, et cetera, et cetera. So, I guess I thought, well, if you really thought of science that was accurate like that, you would just go win the Nobel Prize yourself.
Oh yeah.
How could the writers, it's hard when
Well,
you're
I
depicting
mean,
a fictional character who's amazing at something. How do you do that if you're not actually
right.
amazing at that thing?
I see. I see. Yeah. So again, I do think that there were diminishing returns after the fifth season. On the bright side, after the fifth season, they introduced more female characters. The show got a bit more rounded. The harshness, especially of the Howard Wolowitz character, was toned down. In fact, at the end of season 5, Howard Wolowitz specifically apologizes and describes the person that he was in the first 5 seasons as disgusting. So, in a sense, that was the writers apologizing. But I don't know that a single apology like that can really make up for some of what it did. But it did help. It did help take some of the edge off for me. Yeah. Actually, I will say that for me, when The Good Place dwelled too much on philosophy, yeah, I have to admit, sometimes it felt a little forced, actually. I wasn't, yeah, for me, the philosophy in The Good Place, did it strengthen the show? I don't know that it did. Maybe actually, I don't know if you want to take the time to address why the Good Place felt it needed a character who was an expert in moral philosophy. I mean, to me, okay, what did Chidi's expertise in moral philosophy entertain the audience? I would say probably not. Did it help inform the audience? I don't know. That's a question you could probably answer better than me.
Yeah. I think dramatically, I thought it worked really well because it answered Eleanor's needs. So he had this information that Eleanor felt like she needed to become a better person.
So there's a plot thread where Eleanor wants to be a better person.
I mean, yeah, I think that is the plot.
And the question, and so she develops this relationship with Chidi, the philosopher. And she's okay. All right. Here, I'm going to say that to be a better person doesn't require philosophy. It requires what I'm going to call common sense. I don't know if that's a controversial statement.
Yeah, it's definitely something that philosophers argue about, is whether studying moral philosophy makes you better.
Like, to me, utilitarianism is such obvious bullshit that sorry, I'm coming in hot on this.
About that kind of
I'm coming in hot on this one. To me, moral philosophy, to me, utilitarianism is such obvious bullshit that I don't understand. Like, talking about it is not going to help Eleanor become a better person. I mean, the Eleanor character begins as someone who only ever thinks about herself. But I don't think you need a philosopher to say, hey, maybe you should worry about someone other than yourself once in a while.
Right. That is true. And so one theory of metaethics is intuitionism, that holds that we have some sort of native ability to detect intuitively what the correct thing to do is in a particular case.
Oh, right. I mean, I do think that, I think haven't they done a study with chimpanzees where even chimpanzees have a sense of fairness and an ability to lie about certain things?
Yeah. And in fact, there's a whole branch of moral philosophy called ethical anti-theory that holds that it's impossible.
Wait, hold on. Ethical anti-theory?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, go on. Now you may say what...
It's impossible to give a theoretical account of proper moral action. So some people are, like Kant, are trying to systematize moral
interesting.
rules. And then there's ethical anti-theory, which holds that you cannot give rules.
Wait, is there
there's always some kind of exception in some situation, et cetera.
Is there a philosophy anti-theory which says that the minute a philosopher starts thinking about a topic, they're going to become increasingly irrelevant to the real world applications of that topic?
It could be. I mean, we had T-shirts at my grad program that said Michigan philosophy on the front, and on the back it said, "Sure, this works in practice, but does it work in theory?" And I think that's pretty accurate sometimes of what philosophers are doing.
Actually, now our podcast
objects are.
Our podcast has accidentally descended into just both of us ripping on philosophy.
Well, I mean, I don't hear myself ripping on philosophy.
I will mention on the same topic. I'll mention that Tom Lehrer defined. Do you know what Tom Lehrer defined a philosopher as?
What is that?
Tom Lehrer, a famous humorist from the 20th century, defined a philosopher as someone who gives advice to people who are happier than he is.
I wouldn't disagree.
To be fair, I am going a little too hard on this. I like science. I like philosophy. Although, there's a philosophy of science, which we can discuss some other time, maybe another episode. But yeah, sometimes I do feel like philosophers take things a little too far. I'm probably not the only person who thinks that.
Well, so with the show, it's an excellent question, I think, about how much benefit the particular philosophy that's discussed. Because they could do a version of it where they never told you the philosophy theory, they just exemplified it. Right? It could be inspired by the philosophy, but they just never tell you what the philosophy is. And so it's very didactic in a way that it tells you this is the theory we're talking about.
Yeah, by didactic you mean the show goes an extra mile to actually list the names of the philosophers and the specific theories that are being introduced. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it says this is utilitarianism, and then there's a discussion about utilitarianism. You can have a fictional show where you're evaluating whether utilitarianism is a good moral theory, where you never say utilitarianism or even moral theory or anything. It's just implicit in the show.
Honestly, Chidi could have been a moral philosopher and done what you just said, which is to say, Eleanor doesn't need to know the name of the moral philosopher. There was never going to be a test, right? There was element. I remember at least one or two episodes where it was almost as though Ellen was studying for a test. But there was never going to be a written exam, was there?
Right. No, she just had to actually be good. So
yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think much of my criticism stands, although I realize I feel like I've really thrown down a gauntlet when it comes to a scientist evaluating philosophy. Maybe we can lure someone else.
Well, let's pick that thread up. In fact, when we talk about philosophy of science, that could be an interesting thing because philosophers also philosophize about what you do. So,
that's right.
Might have thoughts about that.
Actually, I don't know where we are on time, but there was actually an episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon and Amy argue. Amy is Sheldon's girlfriend, and I won't provide any more spoilers than that. But Sheldon and Amy get into their first real argument because over what's essentially a philosophical difference. Sheldon says that physics will explain the behavior of atoms, and in doing so, will explain everything there is to know about the brain, since the brain is made of atoms. Amy, on the other hand, says that the brain is the organ we use to understand science and physics and psychology, and therefore, by studying the way the brain processes information and produces scientific theories, her ideas are more important than Sheldon's. So I guess neither of them is arguing a philosophical point of view, but you could easily have had a third character there who said, well, philosophy explains the philosophy of science, and so philosophy is the best.
Yeah, and probably some philosophers might say that. But she does reference reductionism, which is a particular philosophical theory, about philosophy of mind.
Oh, honestly, we could maybe we can do an episode about some of these issues.
Yeah. Okay, but I think we'll have to call it to a halt right there, and we'll go from there in future episodes. Thanks for listening.